So now that your playground is all set up, in this lesson I'd like to run you through how to add your nodes to the screen. Because we are working in a playground, it's going to be a little different to working in a complete application. Don't worry though, because it isn't that different. The first thing we're going to do differently is import the XE Playground framework. This is a framework specially designed to help you run games in the playground. Before we continue, come up to View, Utilities, and Show File Inspector. What we're going to do is just make sure that Run in Full Simulator is ticked on. If this checkbox is not selected, then we won't be able to test any Sprite Kit games. Once that is done, you can just click and drag to close the inspector. So if you remember from video 200, you need a view and a scene before you can put any sprites or nodes on your screen. So let's start by creating a view. You might remember before we used a variable with var. The view we create is actually going to be a constant. So we're going to use let. Going to give it the name view. After that, if you add a colon, you can tell it that it is of type skView. Now because we are defining the type straight away, we don't actually need to tell it that it is an skView. It will know because it's going to be assigned to an skView. So I can take that out and just make it equal to skView, then use an open rounded brackets to see what we can use to initialize this skView. So we've got to give it a frame. The frame is going to be the bounding area of the skView. You can see here that this frame accepts a CGRect data type. This is actually a structure. We'll go into what structures are a bit later if you haven't encountered them before. So if I type in CGRect, open rounded bracket, you can see a few options here. Just going to use this one, give it an X and Y position of 0. The width and height will be equal to the size of an iPad screen. The one other thing we're going to do a little differently for the playground is type in this XCP show view, give it a name, and then pass it the view we just created. And that will display it on the screen. Now that we have our view, we need to put a scene within that view. So once again, you can use let to create a constant, name it scene, and you don't have to give it a type because we're going to assign it straight away. So sk scene, open round bracket, and we're going to use size. And this accepts a CG size object, and we're just going to put in the same width and height as the view. Our scene needs a scale mode. You can do this by using sk scene scale mode, or just putting in a dot and using aspect fill. Because the scale mode knows what type it is expecting, it doesn't need you to specify that it is a sk scale mode object. Now we can tell our view to present the scene, which is named scene. Straight away you don't really notice anything too different, so I'm just going to set this background to black, and now you can see that that scene is definitely within that view. So now that we've come this far, we can finally talk about nodes. So let's make one with a variable, so var my node. You'll notice that I'm using camel case here, so because there's two words in this name, we've left out the spaces. The first word is lowercase, the second word starts with uppercase. This is common practice when working with Objective-C and Swift, so it's probably a good habit to get into. And this will be equal to a skNode object. We're going to give this node a position, so mynode.position equals CG point. We're going to give it an X and Y of 0 for now. Now let's tell our scene to add child mynode. This is what actually adds the object to the scene. You'll notice that nothing changes in the scene. That's because this node is just an invisible point. If we add something to our node though, say a blue box, then we can see it. Just going to change my node to a constant. It doesn't need to be a variable in this case, because once we initialize it, we're not going to reinitialize it. Now, blue box is going to be a sprite node. We haven't talked about those yet, so I'm just going to leave it at this for now. Just know that we've created a sprite, its color is blue, and its size is 150 by 150. I'm going to give it a position of 0, 0. There's a shortcut to this by using cg.0. So now let's add the blue box to our node by going mynode.addChild and then blue box. Now I can demonstrate the node to you, because you can see the blue box has been added at the bottom left corner. If I change the position of my node, then the position of my blue box is then changed as well. Its position is still 0, 0, but it's now relative to my node. It's just handy to understand at this stage that by moving one, you move all of its children as well. So because my blue box is a child of the node, when the node moves, the child will move. Now that you know your way around the playground, let's have a look at an actual Xcode project.